The Moonbeam Thread. Elara lived in a small, quiet cottage at the edge of a vast, whispering wood. The cottage, built by her grandfather's hands from stone and timber, had a single window that faced the eastern sky. Each evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the world in shades of orange and violet, Elara would finish her simple supper of bread and soup, wash her single bowl and spoon, and wait for the night to begin its silent performance. Her life was one of gentle solitude. Her parents, kind and bright-eyed, had been cartographers who vanished on a voyage to map the uncharted seas beyond the northern cliffs. They had left her in the care of her grandmother, a woman with silver hair and a voice that sounded like the rustling of pages in an old book. But her grandmother, too, had passed the previous winter, leaving Elara alone with the cottage, the garden, and the memories. The only thing that kept the loneliness from swallowing her whole was the moon. From her earliest memories, the moon had been her secret friend. While other children feared the dark, Elara welcomed it, for it meant the moon would soon appear. It was not just its light that comforted her, but its texture. On clear nights when the sky was a deep velvety black, the moonlight that streamed through her window seemed tangible. It pooled on her wooden floor not like light, but like liquid silver, and if she stared at it just right, she could see tiny shimmering motes dancing within the beam. One night, a night of the full harvest moon, something changed. The moon was so large and so bright it cast sharp, black shadows across her room. The beam of light that fell across her patchwork quilt was almost solid. Driven by an impulse she did not understand, Elara sat up and reached her hand into the light. She expected to feel nothing but a faint warmth. Instead, her fingers brushed against something cool and smooth. It felt like the finest silk, but with a weightless, thrumming energy. She gasped and pulled her hand back. The sensation vanished. Cautiously, she reached out again. There it was, a cool, smooth strand. It was as if the moonlight had a thread at its very core. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She pinched the invisible thread between her thumb and forefinger and, with the utmost care, gave a gentle tug. To her utter astonishment, the entire beam of light on her quilt shivered, and a long, shimmering thread of pure silver light slid out from the central pool and coiled like a tame serpent in the palm of her hand. It was beautiful. It glowed with a soft, internal light, and though it looked like captured starlight, it felt as real as the wool in her grandmother's old knitting basket. This was her secret discovery, a moonbeam thread. That night, she did not sleep. She sat by the window, holding the thread, watching it pulse gently in time with her own heartbeat. As the first hints of dawn painted the sky gray, the thread in her hand faded, becoming translucent, then invisible, and finally it was gone, leaving only the memory of its cool weight. The next night, she was ready. As soon as the moon was high enough, she reached into the beam and found the thread again. She pulled, and more of the silvery strand emerged. She worked for hours, pulling the thread from the moonbeam and carefully winding it into a large, loose ball. By the time the moon began its descent, she had a sphere of shimmering light the size of her head. And again, at dawn, it faded away. This became her ritual, her purpose. By day, she tended her garden, weeding the carrot patches and training the pea vines. She collected eggs from her small flock of chickens, she swept the cottage floor, and she read from her grandmother's old books of stories and herb lore. But her true day began at night. She was a collector of moonlight, a spinner of dreams. After a week of collecting, she realized she needed a way to store the thread more permanently, to weave it into a form that would not vanish with the sun. She remembered an old, small loom that had belonged to her grandmother. It was tucked away in the attic, covered in dust and memories. She brought it down, cleaned it, and placed it by her window. That night she began to weave. She used the moonbeam threads as both warp and weft, creating a fabric of light. It was slow, patient work. Her fingers learned the rhythm of it. The loom clicked and clacked softly, a quiet nocturnal music that kept the silence of the cottage at bay. The cloth she created was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was lighter than air, shimmering, and it held its form even as the sun rose. She had created a permanent piece of the night. She wove a small square, then a larger one. She made a delicate, glowing handkerchief and then a scarf that shimmered with every color of the starlight. But her grand project, the one that filled her thoughts by day and her hands by night, was a cloak. A full, sweeping cloak woven entirely from the threads of 1,000 moonbeams. Months passed, the seasons turned. The lush green of summer gave way to the fiery palette of autumn and then to the stark, bare beauty of winter. Elara's cloak grew longer, its beauty more profound. It was a map of the night sky itself, with sections that shone with the cold blue light of distant stars and others that glowed with the warm gold of the moon's own face. Finally, on the night of the winter solstice, the longest night of the year, she tied off the last thread. The cloak was complete. It lay across her bed, a pool of liquid light, shimmering and pulsing with a gentle, silent energy. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen, a testament to her patience, her loneliness, and her faith in magic. She lifted it, it was weightless. She swung it around her shoulders and fastened a simple clasp, also woven from moonlight, at her throat. The effect was instantaneous. A feeling of profound warmth and well-being flooded her. The slight chill of the winter night vanished. But more astonishingly, her feet lifted a few inches from the wooden floor. She was hovering. A laugh of pure, unadulterated joy bubbled up from her chest. She was floating. Tentatively, she leaned forward as if swimming in air. She drifted across her small bedroom. With a thought, she turned, the cloak billowing around her in a silent, shimmering wave. She was not just wearing the cloak, she was one with it. It was an extension of her will. Her eyes turned to the open window. The moon, a perfect, brilliant silver coin, hung in the sky, calling to her. An idea, wild and wonderful, bloomed in her mind. She climbed onto the windowsill. The cold winter air nipped at her cheeks, but under the cloak she was warm. She looked down at the ground, far below, then up at the infinite sky. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out. She did not fall. She rose. The cloak carried her upward, as effortlessly as a dandelion seed on the breeze. The wind whispered past her ears, a soft, rushing sound that was the only music in the profound silence of the night. She looked down and watched her cottage shrink, becoming a tiny dollhouse nestled against the edge of the wood. The village beyond was just a cluster of dark shapes with a few pinpricks of light from late-night lanterns. Higher and higher she flew. She passed through a low-lying cloud, and for a moment she was surrounded by a cool, damp mist that beaded on the cloak like tiny diamonds before evaporating. She saw a flock of migrating geese sleeping on the wind, their wings outstretched as they glided, and she carefully floated around them so as not to disturb their slumber. The world below was a painting in monochrome, all soft blacks and grays and brilliant silvers under the moonlight. Rivers were ribbons of mercury, roads were pale scratches on the land, and the great forest was a sea of dark, swirling shadows. The fear she expected to feel never came. Instead, she felt a deep, abiding peace. She was home. Her journey seemed to take both an instant and an eternity. The air grew thinner and colder, but the cloak provided a perfect, cozy warmth. The stars, which from Earth were mere pinpricks, now revealed themselves as brilliant, swirling suns of every color: blue, red, gold, and white. The sky was not black, but a deep, profound indigo. And then she was there. Her feet touched down on a surface that was soft and yielding. She stood on the moon. It was not the barren, rocky place astronomers might describe. This was the moon as seen through a dreamer's eyes. The ground was covered in a fine silver dust that glowed with a soft internal light, swirling around her ankles like water with every step she took. Delicate, crystalline flowers grew in patches, their petals chiming softly against each other in a gentle, ethereal music. There were gentle hills and wide, flat plains, and in the distance she could see craters that looked like vast, sleeping amphitheaters. The light here had no single source, everything simply glowed. The air was filled with a sweet, clean scent like night-blooming jasmine and cold stone. And in the center of a wide, flat plain, there was a figure. Elara walked toward it, her feet making no sound in the soft dust. As she drew closer, she saw it was a woman, or a being who looked like a woman. She was ancient and ageless all at once. Her hair was long and silver, flowing over her shoulders like a waterfall of starlight. Her robes were woven from the fabric of the nebula itself, shifting and swirling with colors too beautiful to name. She sat before a loom so vast its top and bottom seemed to vanish into the sky itself. On this great loom she was weaving. She was weaving the night sky. Elara watched, mesmerized. The woman's hands moved with impossible speed and grace. She would reach into a basket at her side that seemed to contain pure starlight, draw out a handful of shimmering threads, and weave them into the tapestry. With each pass of the shuttle, a new constellation was born. A cluster of blue threads became a swirling nebula. A single, brilliant white thread became a distant, twinkling star. She was the architect of the heavens. This was the Moon Weaver. The weaver looked up. Her eyes were the color of a calm, midnight sea, and they held the wisdom and weariness of countless ages. They fell upon Elara and then upon the cloak she wore. A slow, gentle smile touched her lips. So, the weaver said, her voice the sound of 1,000 distant wind chimes, a soft, melodic rustling. "You are the one, the child with the patient hands." Elara, suddenly feeling very small, bowed her head. I didn't mean to take what wasn't mine," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The threads, I found them." The weaver's smile widened. "You did not take, little one, you gathered. You have been gathering the threads I let fall, the ones I no longer have the time to use." She gestured with a long, graceful hand toward her magnificent tapestry. Now that Elara looked more closely, she could see that the grand work was not perfect. There were thin spots, patches where the dark background showed through more prominently. In other places, the threads looked frayed and worn. "It is a vast universe," the weaver sighed, and her sigh was the sound of a solar wind blowing across empty space. "And it grows vaster every night. There are so many new worlds, so many new dreamers. My threads are stretched so thin. I weave the stars and the nebulae, the comets and the planets, but the dreams are what I am neglecting." "Dreams?" Elara asked. "The dreams of children," the weaver said softly. "The happy dreams, the comforting dreams, the dreams that give hope and banish fear. They are the finest threads of all, spun from the purest moonlight. But I have no time to spin them, to weave them and send them down to earth. The darkness is always waiting, you see. It rushes in to fill the empty spaces where dreams should be." Elara's heart ached. She thought of the lonely nights in her cottage before she had discovered the threads. She thought of the empty silence. That was the darkness the weaver spoke of. Without a moment's hesitation, she unfastened the clasp of her beautiful cloak. She held it out, the shimmering fabric pooling in her arms. "Please," she said, her voice firm now, "take this, use it. It's made from the threads you let fall. Maybe it can help fill the empty spaces." The moon weaver looked at Elara, and in her ancient eyes, Elara saw a profound and tender gratitude. She did not take the cloak. Instead, she reached out and touched it with one fingertip. At her touch, the cloak dissolved. It did not unravel or tear. It simply came apart into its constituent threads, a river of pure liquid light that swirled and danced in the air between them. The weaver gestured, and the river of light flowed toward the great loom, weaving itself seamlessly into the thinnest, darkest patch of the tapestry. Instantly, that part of the sky which had looked worn and tired now glowed with a soft, new radiance. The stars there shone brighter, and a faint, beautiful aurora began to dance within it. "Your gift is generous," the weaver said, "but the gift of your hands is greater. You have the patience and the heart for the finer work. You have already proven it." She gestured for Elara to come closer. She then led her to a smaller, more humble loom that sat beside the great one. This loom was made of pale, polished wood that smelled of sandalwood and starlight. "This," said the weaver, "is the loom of dreams. Will you help me, Elara? Will you be my apprentice? Will you weave the dreams for the children of Earth?" Tears welled in Elara's eyes, a purpose, a true, magical purpose. She was no longer alone, she was needed. "Yes," she breathed, "oh yes." And so her true work began. The moon weaver taught her the secrets of the craft. She showed her how to spin not just moonlight, but emotions and memories into the threads. A happy memory of a mother's lullaby became a thread of warm, gold light. A hopeful wish upon a star became a thread of shimmering silver. The comfort of a soft blanket became a thread of cozy, rose-colored light. Elara learned to weave these threads together. She wove dreams of flying over sparkling oceans, of talking to wise old badgers in sun-dappled forests, of feasting in castles made of candy, and of being reunited with lost loved ones in fields of endless flowers. Each dream was a small, perfect tapestry, a story woven from light and love. When a dream was finished, the weaver would take it, breathe upon it, and send it floating down to earth, a tiny, shimmering mote of light that would travel across the vastness of space to find its way into the sleeping mind of a child. The night was long, but Elara worked with a joy she had never known. She was no longer a collector, but a creator. The silence of the moon was no longer lonely, but peaceful, filled with the companionable clicks of the loom and the soft, chiming music of the crystal flowers. As the first hint of dawn approached on the world below, the weaver laid a hand on Elara's shoulder. "It is time for you to return, little weaver, but you may come back whenever the moon is bright. This is your home now, too." Elara's heart swelled with happiness, but then she thought of her cottage, her garden, her chickens. That was her home, too. The weaver understood. From a pocket in her nebula robes, she drew out a small, simple spindle made of the same pale wood as the dream loom. It glowed with a soft, steady light. "Take this," she said. "It is a spindle of permanent moonlight. With this, you can spin threads that will not fade with the dawn. You can do your work from your home and send the dreams to me. And on the clearest nights when your work is done, you may use your cloak to return here to our loom." Elara took the spindle. It felt warm and alive in her hand. The weaver then gestured, and from the air a new cloak began to form, weaving itself from threads of starlight. It was even more beautiful than her first, lined with the shimmering patterns of the Milky Way. "Wear this," the weaver said, "it will always bring you home." Elara fastened the new cloak around her shoulders. She bowed deeply to the moon weaver, her heart too full for words. The journey back was just as beautiful as the journey there. She soared down from the sky, the cloak carrying her effortlessly. She saw the sun beginning to kiss the horizon, setting the world on fire with its rising light. She drifted down toward her cottage, landing softly on her windowsill just as the first ray of sun touched her garden. She stepped back into her room. It was the same as she had left it, but everything felt different. She was different. She placed the glowing spindle carefully on her bedside table. It continued to shine with a soft, moonlight glow, a constant reminder that her adventure had been real. That day, she went about her chores with a new lightness in her step. She hummed as she fed the chickens, she smiled as she weeded the garden. The world seemed brighter, more vivid, because she knew the magic that lay just behind the veil of the night. When night fell, she did not wait for the moonbeam. She took her spindle and sat by the window. She held it up, and to her delight, it began to pull the ambient moonlight from the air, spinning it into a permanent, glowing thread. She had brought a piece of the moon's magic home with her. She worked for hours, spinning threads of hope and comfort. She wove them into small, simple dream shapes: a floating feather, a smiling sun, a protective shield. When she had a small bundle, she went to the window, held them up, and let them go. They floated up into the night sky, drawn like magnets back to the moon weaver's loom to be distributed to children in need of a good dream. And so, Elara's life found its perfect balance. By day, she was a girl of the earth, tending her garden and living a simple life. By night, she was the moon weaver's apprentice, a spinner of comfort and a weaver of dreams. On clear, bright nights when her work was done, she would don her starry cloak and fly back to the moon. She and the weaver would work side by side at the great loom, their silence a comfortable conversation. She was no longer lonely. She had a family, a purpose, and a connection to the greatest magic of all. And if you, on a particularly clear and beautiful night, see a shooting star that seems to move a little slower, shining a little brighter than the others, that is not a star at all. It is one of Elara's dream weavings, a package of hope and comfort, traveling from a small cottage at the edge of a wood, all the way to the moon and back down again to find its way to you.